What's going on, you rogues and rebels? Welcome to a brand new episode of the Rogue Country Podcast. I'm Mike West. Today we are joined by the mighty Ags Connolly. He's got a brand new record coming out that you can help fund through Kickstarter. It's an amazing platform that can help artists really achieve their goals, and we're going to be getting into it in this podcast. But first, let's talk about some dates. In October, myself, Mike West, Chris Dover, and Jody Davis from Fargo Railroad Company, we're going to be going on a little 3-day tour. We are going to be hitting Nottingham on the 14th of October at the Running Horse. We're then going to be hitting Sheffield on the 15th of October at the Alder. And then on the 16th of October, we're going to be hitting Bradford at the Boar and Fable. Now, Chris, myself, and Jody are going to be in all of these dates. But for Nottingham, we're going to be bringing our friend Cold Hands along for the ride. And then in Sheffield, that little rascal Josh Bettis is going to be joining us as well. So I really hope you can come. Enjoy these songwriter rounds that are going to be absolutely phenomenal. We're going to make you laugh, we'll make you cry, and we're going to have a good time regardless. After that, I've got some really cool tour dates myself. On the 6th of November at the York in Bolton, I'm going to be opening the show for Nick Shoulders and Grave Dancer. Grave Dancer has already been on this podcast. He's incredible. Nick Shoulders, I don't need to tell you about Nick Shoulders. You already know who this guy is, and this is his first UK tour, and it's going to be insane. Then in November, I'm going back on the road with Cam Cole, and I'm going to be playing the Night and Day in Manchester on the 17th of November, Boom in Leeds on the 19th of November, the Corporation in Sheffield on the 24th of November, and the Bodega in Nottingham on the 27th of November. So if you see me in Sheffield or Nottingham in October, and then you want to see me in Sheffield or Nottingham in November, they're going to be completely different shows, and I cannot stress enough how much fun we're going to have. Ags Connolly is on the show today. If you know anything about UK country music, this is a name you should be very, very familiar with. He's been a legend of the scene since 2012, 2013 when he started performing, and since then he is one of those artists that everyone respects, everyone loves, and there's a reason why. He's a fucking phenomenal dude. His music's top notch, and he's a really interesting guy to chat to, as we are about to discover. He is currently kickstarting his new album Siempre, where you can help back his record and create this album and make it a real thing of beauty. You can go over to Kickstarter now. The link will be in this podcast, and it's all over Ag's social media posts as well. And you can really show your support for these independent artists. Go directly to the artist and create something special. I'm a huge fan of Kickstarter. I use it to back Luke Hendrickson's most recent project. I've backed a ton of comic books on it. And the main thing is to support the artists you love. I think there's no better platform, especially with all that business that happened with Pledge a while back. Kickstarter is one of the old faithfuls that I truly, really believe in. But let's get down to it, guys. This is episode 52 of the Rogue Country Podcast with Mike West and Ags Connolly. Really excited to talk to you. It's been one of those things that I've known of you for a long time. I've really enjoyed your music. We've not met, which is weird for two people in the UK. But I'm really excited to get to chat to you today. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, you're right. We have never met. I wasn't quite sure actually, but no, I don't think we have. But it is weird because it's been quite a long time that we've known of each other. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because I think it was 2018 we did like a mini festival together in Manchester, and that Revolution at the Ranch thing. And I think you headlined it. I was like first or second on, but I had 2 gigs that day, so I did mine and then basically fucked off to another one. And I think you closed out the show.
Was that the thing at the Gulliver's?
And no, it was the old school bus thing.
Oh, that festival. Yes, I remember now. Yeah. I do remember. Yeah, Lars put it on. Yes, right.
Yeah. But like, let's kind of go to your origin stories, man. What music or like were you listening to as you were growing up? Was it country music or was it something else?
It wasn't country music. My dad definitely wasn't into country music. I think my mum liked it, but she didn't have any records or anything. She wasn't playing it around the house. The stuff I was hearing was a lot of 50s rock and roll and a lot of Beatles and things like that. It was like, the stuff that my dad grew up with. And the person that I really latched onto at that age was Buddy Holly. And I think looking back, it's because Buddy Holly actually was a country singer when he started out, and he graduated into rock and roll. and I could maybe hear that in the music somewhere. I think because I especially liked, excuse me, I loved his rock and roll stuff, but I also loved his more singer songwritery stuff and his kind of more country-esque stuff. And that was what really spoke to me at the time, and I think that was my first inklings of it. But then after that, as a probably not even a teenager, like when I was 12 or something, I was really into Nirvana and I started to get into punk, and I still like that stuff, and I had that sort of angst-ridden years, like listening to that stuff. But by the time I was about 14, I'd started listening to Ron Sexsmith, and that was what then turned me on to Leonard Cohen, and I realised that what I really loved was songwriting, and that was the stuff I was interested in, like songwriters.
Yeah.
And then after that, I just progressed through a number of them, and I thought that what I wanted to be was a folk singer, but then I realized I didn't actually like a lot of folk music. So that I was a bit stuck for a while, and then it slowly became obvious to me that country music was the home of the real simple, direct songwriting that I really loved. And that was the thing that spoke to me the most, and that was what I wanted to do. And then I realized it just kind of suited me. It suited my singing voice. It just suited my personality, and I went on to country from there. So it's a bit unusual because a lot of people grow up listening to it, or they had a grandparent or something who had a load of vinyl records and all that sort of stuff. But I never had any of that. I kind of just had to discover it myself the long way around.
Yeah, no, I'm the same, man. Like I started on like the kind of angst-ridden years, and it was like, Nirvana, and then moving to like Linkin Park and some like heavier stuff. But it was that like Nirvana and grunge and like punk stuff, because it's so weirdly close to country music.
Yeah,
with how they're influencing the songs. That it was when I got a bit older and I started finding like you've got the Johnny Cash poster, like the American recordings of what I found, and it's one of those things where you latch onto them, and then I think it makes it more important because it was your discovery as well. It wasn't like you found it through a grandparent or a parent. It was like, I found this and this is fucking mine now.
Yeah, I guess that's part of it. I mean, that was certainly the case with stuff like Leonard Cohen and Loudon Wainwright III, who's probably still my favourite songwriter. And it was like, no one else was listening to them. And people I was at school with, like, just like, they didn't get it at all. But it was stuff that that I realised suited me, and yeah, absolutely, there was a big element of that it was my thing, absolutely.
Yeah, and you've grown up. Is it Oxfordshire you're based?
That's right. Yeah.
Have you always grown up around that area?
Yeah. My family's was from London originally, and they moved out here with my brother just before I was born. So they're technically all from London, including my brother, and I was the only one from here. But it was weird because it meant that because my brother grew up there, he couldn't wait to sort of get back to live in a city, whereas because I've been born here, like in the countryside, I've never wanted to leave the countryside, and I never liked the idea of living in a city.
No, definitely not.
But it's I think this also had a big impact on my music and my songwriting because I do appreciate all that kind of the rural stuff and being out in the open and all that, and I think that it definitely has some kind of an influence on my music. Yeah,
no, totally, man. That's one of the things that I really like about British country like yourself is country is American and it has that side of things, but rural is rural no matter where you are. And it'd be interesting to try and find, like, obviously I know like there's a few good Australian singers, obviously they have a rural market and like a population there, so it's cool to see you don't have to be an American to sing country music. You don't even necessarily have to be rural, but it does lend that level of like not authenticity but experience and history to the person when they're singing, and that's what I really enjoy about your stuff.
Yeah, there's I saw a thing recently on Twitter about there's certain African countries where country music's huge because it was brought there by some radio DJ or other at some time, but a lot of the people in these particular countries happen to be farmers and have rural jobs, and a lot of the issues that were raised in country music were very relevant to them, and it's caught on, and over the decades it's been passed down through the generations, and I think that's great, and it just shows you how universal the subject matter can be.
Yeah, no, totally. And your debut album came out in 2014. I kind of see like this modern country wave of like artists happening from like 2012, 2016 onwards. You kind of were like just at the peak of it or just at the very beginning of it. What was it like when you first started out in like 2013, 2014?
It was different because, I mean, yeah, that wave you're talking about hadn't really got going, not really. And so when I came out, it was very hard to find anyone who was interested in that sort of thing. At the time, I don't know if there's a duo from up north, My Darling Clementine, that have been around for a good long while. Michael Weston King and Lou Dalglish, and they were on a label called Drumfire. And I saw that their first album had come out on this label, and I thought, oh well, that label might be interested in what I do, and it turned out they were. But other than that, there was absolutely nothing, and there was nothing like we have now with this big UK country scene in inverted commas.
Yeah,
it's like that. Well, I played at the very first Country to Country at the O2, and it was absolutely nothing like it is now. Like they had the stages on the sort of concourse outside, because you had the big names obviously in the arena. I think Carrie Underwood and Tim McGraw that year, but the stage on the outside, there was no scene to draw a crowd for that. There was nothing there, so there were only a handful of us actually playing on those stages. We had to do 6 sets over the 2 days that it was on, and there was hardly anyone watching the stages. The acts that were playing were not exclusively country. They were just whoever was available, and it was very, very different. I think it was the next year that it had grown much bigger, probably because at that point the Nashville TV show was getting very big, and that's what started so much of this. Yeah, was people watching that Nashville TV show and thinking that they like that sort of thing. So then after that it grew exponentially, but at the time it didn't really exist, and there wasn't this UK country surge, and there wasn't there weren't all these people of a certain age suddenly who'd been listening to Taylor Swift and seen the Nashville thing suddenly wanting to go country. It just hadn't happened. So it was sort of a strange time. And it was actually a bit of a lull, because before that you can look back and see that there were things before that were more popular, like the big Wembley festivals, the giant Wembley festivals.
In the 80s.
Exactly. And it went into the 90s eventually. They did try and revive it very unsuccessfully at one point. Those things were huge, and they used to get huge names over, and you had all the people from the country music club scene in this country who used to go to that, and you'd see some big stars there, and that was kind of really on the wane and on the decline at the time, probably at that time that I started, just before the Nashville TV show kicked everything off again. That's a very sort of potted history of it, but I think that's probably just about what happened.
Yeah, no, man, it's so interesting because like I've been talking to some of the old guys who like did the Wembley festivals or went, and I've been talking to a few people just to try and get a history of what happened beforehand, because the Hillsiders were quite a big name. And
I think they were the first UK band to play on the Grand Ole Opry, I think.
Yeah, I think that's what it says on their website. I couldn't find anything to verify that claim. So,
well, do you know what? Sorry to interrupt, but there's so little documented history of UK country music until the last decade or two. There's almost nothing from that era. You can find the odd thing that Alan Cackett wrote or something like that. Yeah. Those people who did document it, but there's almost nothing. I'd like to think there's a lot of back issues of country music people or something that have a lot more about it. But other than that, you look on the internet, there is no. I mean, the internet just wasn't used by the British country music fraternity at all, and until recent times, and that's a real shame. But sorry to interrupt.
No, that's the thing. And it's like the Alan Cackett stuff I found, and he uploaded some just like JPEGs of his country music articles and stuff, so I've been reading them. I'd found out about, like, obviously the Hillsiders are from up my way in Liverpool, Phil Brady and the Ranches, and that's one of the fun things for me going through charity shops and all local record stores is trying to find. I found like a copy of Phil Brady and the Ranches. It was like fucking no way. It was like £3. I was like, score. But it's been that interesting thing, but everyone kind of forgets or chooses to ignore that between like the 50s to like the 80s, early 90s, it was fucking huge.
Yes, yeah, it was. There was that huge. there was a Peterborough festival that used to happen as well, and I think one year there were 200,000 people at it. It's like, you just wouldn't have that now. You wouldn't have that now. I think that point was made by Duncan Warwick and country music people once, because people were saying, is country music bigger than it's ever been in the UK? And he said, well, actually, if you look back, and listed all this stuff, when it was much, much bigger. It wasn't just this movement, which is arguably not going to last, of people of a certain age following the Nashville program, but it was very different back then as well. You had a lot of the British acts were covers bands mostly. They had some of their own original stuff, and I'm sure they fight the corner for that, but also a lot of it was covers, because that's what people expected. That's what people at the country music clubs expected. And when I started out, I played a few of those country music clubs, and they did not like it because I wasn't playing covers. I was playing my own stuff. I also didn't have a backing track or anything like that. And that's kind of what they came to expect. So it became a little bit cheesy, I think. I think that the band like the Hillsiders were probably trying to do it a bit different and be be more like an original band. But honestly, there probably wasn't that much market for that, because people just wanted to hear the records they knew from the radio or whatever. Yeah,
that's one of the things, because I've been doing this for 6 years now, and obviously I'm not country. I wouldn't consider myself traditional country or anything. I think we'd go really well in a lineup together, but what we do is a bit on opposite ends of the spectrum. Yeah. But even I kind of saw like the old country scene kind of became like a parody, and it was a cheesy cliche of itself with that backing track type of thing. And then it was kind of like the insincerity and like the TikTokers, like social media popularity side of the new wave coming through. And then in between that, there's kind of the artists that are snaking their way to try and create something that I think will hopefully last a bit longer than what's currently out there.
Yeah, no, I would agree. These things, they go in like sort of stages and cycles, and I don't really know how long this current one will last. I mean, to be fair, the country to country thing at the O2, as an example, has been very popular, and I think if they can still keep drawing big names, then it will continue to be. But it's kind of failed on one level, in that they started as trying to be something that brought that new stuff and kind of fused it with the past. They'd always have legacy acts, as they call them, but they're finding that no one's interested in the legacy acts, because all they want to hear is the newer ones that they've heard on the radio or whatever now, or seen online somewhere, and that's interesting. I think it's been said for so long now that there's got to be a split in country music at some point. It's been said for so long, but there never seems to be. They just keep dragging the word and using it for new things all the time, and calling anything new country. And it's like, that's why, I mean, without going on a massive rant, that's why Ameripolitan was created, because it was like, the word is meaningless now, so we created this other word for more traditional stuff, and to shine a spotlight on that. And I think they hoped that would be the break, but it didn't happen really, and country is still used to describe anything and everything. And so who can decide if the current thing fails or not, if everything's just called country anyway?
Yeah, I think it's hard because people really enjoy creating subgenres, but then no one wants to admit that these subgenres exist. Like, I always think if country music was approached the same way metal was approached, where you can like, metal music, but then you can enjoy thrash, speed, black, death, new, but you'll still like, well, I like metal, but then it'll be like, well, I don't like sleaze, but overall. But then with country, it's like, I like country, but I only like this bit of country. And it's like, will you admit or even try to see how the others are connected? And they're like, no,
that's it. And that's, I guess, one of the problems is there's not really a bridge, because I've even seen some of the fans of the newer stuff, because don't get me wrong, there are loads of people who like loads of different aspects of country, but there are a lot of newer fans, shall we say, that kind of talk about the old stuff in disparaging terms, and they don't like when the old stuff is sort of forced on them or inserted into their new stuff somehow. And I can't remember what I was going to say about that now, but it's basically that is against what everyone told me would happen. They said, oh no, this is good for country, because everyone's going to start looking back at the old stuff and wanting to discover more and all that. And that has not happened at all. And that's why I say there has to be a split at some point. I can't remember the original point I was going to make there, but that'll have to do.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I kind of, from everything I've ever seen of you online and stuff, it seems like you pretty much like know everyone coming out of like the States as well. Like, you know, Pat Reedy and those type of guys. I kind of think, you know, the Pat Reedys, the Gems on VHS, and then later the Western F's, I think that's been hugely influential on like the modern country scene that's kind of bypassing both sides of things. There seems to be like a vein of artists and fans who have taken inspiration from the more traditional side of stuff as well as what's happening in America and try to forge their own way. Have you seen that with obviously having a close relationship with those type of guys?
Yeah, that has been a more recent thing. I mean, the thing is, a lot of that comes out of at some point, and I'm not sure what started this. I'm not sure. About 10 years ago or so, there was a load of people in Nashville who started coming to Nashville. And I think, okay, it probably does come back to the Nashville TV show, honestly, who started, and some of them loved country music and wanted to make it anyway, but some of them didn't. Some of them were not quite sure what they wanted to do. And some of those people have started doing country and then moved away from it again. I won't name any names on that, but it was quite noticeable. And some of them have got themselves ensconced in country and just make whatever music they want and still call it country. About 10 years ago, there was a lot of people who started out around the same time, and the Gems on VHS and Western AF stuff that you talk about, that kind of grew out of that because the guys who run those things realized there was this scene evolving, and it's kind of a new a newish thing of the last 10 years. It's hard to like I say, it's hard to really put a finger on it, but there is definitely a thing there, and a lot of those people are. It's kind of a cult thing. A lot of them, some of them have been picked up by like the bigger labels or bigger independents like New Western Rounder and stuff, but a lot of them are not, and a lot of them are just kind of existing in this world where they get hundreds of thousands of views on YouTube or whatever, but no one's really putting them on big tours or giving them big record deals or anything. It's like it's a funny little world but it's the sort of thing. If you're plugged into it, you know there's a load of great stuff there, but a lot of people don't know about it. Yeah,
no, it's a weird one, and it's interesting. Like the Nashville TV show, I didn't think it was as influential or as important as I think it is, because I watched the first couple of seasons, and I remember I went and watched. They did like a gig in Manchester at the Bridgewater Hall place. And I went to it.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I met a couple of them after the show and stuff. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is cool. And then I dropped out of it. But, you know, as a country music fan, I was like, I don't like any of this music. I just watched it because it was like a cheesy soap opera and I just had something to fill the time. But it's weird how, you know, people will have that exposure and then be like, this is what country music is.
Yeah.
And then base their whole kind of perception on it.
I really don't know why it caught on so much. It was just been a time and a place thing, I think, because the series in the end just fizzled out, and I think people lost interest. The first series, I believe, they tried to include a lot more of the sort of traditional stuff in it. A couple of my friends were on it, like just performing live in Nashville or whatever. But I think from there on in, they realised that their target audience was, not being funny, younger people, mostly women who were interested in the soap opera aspect and how the music fed into that and all that. And they had the Taylor Swift soap opera type songs as well and all that. Not to just constantly pick on Taylor Swift, because she did admit that she left country, but that sort of thing. And it's that kind of crowd. And they focused on that, and that's what it became. And then it died a death. But I think it caught a lot of people at a ripe age to be like, oh, I like that sort of thing. I like dressing up like a cowgirl once a year and going to the O2. You know, I don't really know why it was so popular, but I think it was a time and a place thing.
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely a lightning in the bottle type thing that went from there. But let's get back to your stuff a bit more, man. I dug up a quote from you from 2013.
Right.
I don't want to brag, but I did some research for this.
Yeah.
And it's talking about like you being a traditional country singer-songwriter, and one of the quotes is, I plow a lone furrow in the UK as there are many other artists that cover country music. Do you think that's changed in the last 10 years? Is there anyone contemporary in the UK coming up that you consider to be doing the same type of thing you're doing, or flying that traditional flag?
There's not many. There are more people, I think, kind of focusing on that. The, what I find is that a lot of the people who are doing it now, I mean, aside from the pop crowd or whatever that we've talked about, like they tend to be focusing on something a bit different from what I focus on. Because when I started, I was just purely wanted to basically be like sort of like 50s, 60s, 70s sort of type country. I mean, I've kind of moved on a little bit, changed a bit. I'm still, still traditional, but I mean, I don't really know if there's anyone who does specifically that sort of thing. A lot of other people around are influenced by newer things, not newer pop things, but newer things. And whilst I like newer stuff, all my heroes are from the old days, really. And it's like that's, there aren't many other people like that unless I'm missing them. People come and go as well. That's the other thing. So people start out promising and then they'll disappear somewhere, or they'll stop playing music altogether, which is a real shame. And you get that. So I don't know. I know it's a very vague answer, but I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
Because I often think, actually, if somebody came out and said, right, I'm going to put on a traditional country festival in the UK, you'd be struggling to fill the lineup. And it's like, you'd be having to dig people up from the old days. And like, it's like, I don't know if you know John Miller up in Scotland, like has been sort of making a bit of a comeback recently, like, and he was always really good. But, if he wasn't making a comeback now, like, there would be, there'd be no one in Scotland really, like it's, and it's also comes down to how you define country as well. We come back to that thing, but I'm sorry it's such a vague answer. I don't really think there are many people doing it the way I do it. And I don't mean good or bad. I mean like just in terms of style.
No, I think that's a valid thing, man, because it is one of those things. Because obviously we've looked as like from Rogue's side of stuff, putting on a bit more a traditional thing, a bit more that has that sound and that vibe to it. And it is one of those things where it's so diluted here that having that type of artist is a rare thing, which I think is why you do so well, and loads of people like listen to your music and look up to you, is because you do fly that flag like unapologetically into how that is your style.
Yeah, I think that's it's probably part of it, and it works in my favor, to be honest, because a lot of times, like I played a festival at the weekend in South London, and I just sound completely different from everyone else on the bill at most things. Even when I played Buckle and Boots one year up there in Manchester, where is it, Stockport, I think.
Yeah.
And I was the only act that had a pedal steel, and it was like the only one doing anything remotely traditional. And that was, it does help me in a way that it helps me stand out, but it also means, and this is the problem I've always had, it's very hard for me to fit in anywhere. It's very hard for me to fit in on a lot of bills. And I never really had the sort of rites of passage of going on tour opening for a big act or something like that, because I just couldn't do it. I'm too niche. There's no act I could do that for. I've had the odd gig here and there where I was lucky enough to open for some big names, but it was never something that was going to last. Like I had other artists that I know who went on tour opening for Shaking Stevens and stuff like that. It's like, I'm never going to do that because the music I'm playing is just never ever going to fit with that. And that was the choice that I made. So I can't complain about it. It's just a fact.
Yeah, no, definitely. But that does remind me, you played with Whitney Rose last week as well, didn't you? Sussex.
We did, on Friday. Yeah, we were on the festival together. Yeah.
Cool. I also opened for it twice on the weekend. But what did you think of those gigs? What festivals you played with it?
It was the Mid Sussex Music and Ale Festival in Hassocks near Brighton, and I opened for Whitney back in 2019 as well in London, and it was a stark contrast because when I opened for her in 2019, she had kind of a younger band, and it was a great show. It was at the Lexington in London, and it was a cool show and all that. But this show that I saw on Friday was amazing, and it was because she had an Austin band with her. She had Lisa Pank. Oh, you were there. I mean, you met these guys, Lisa Pankratz and Brad Fordham. On drums and bass, and I mean, Lisa Pankratz is one of the best drummers in Austin, if not the best. She's absolutely unreal, and Brad Fordham's just as sort of as good a bass player as you'll get. And Noel McKay, my friend Noel McKay, was the great singer songwriter, was playing lead guitar, and he knows what that Austin sound is. Like it's kind of, yes, it's country, but it's kind of a bit bluesy as well. And just with that band behind her, it was an amazing show, and it just like it absolutely blew me away. Absolutely did. And I'm sure you probably felt the same.
Yeah, no, they were so tight. It was unreal. Like between Lisa and Brad, like the bassist and the drummer, it was just insane. Obviously, Noel coming in, laying that fire. It was really, really fun to watch just how tight they all are, and it shows just that thing. But with those type of artists coming through, do you find that crowd reacts better to like your stuff as well, and that's kind of like the audiences to get in front of?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. In the past, I've tried to sort of get on those shows because I know that people will get it. Because I've played so many gigs over the years where people just do not understand what I'm doing because they don't even really know what traditional country is, so they don't really get it at all. But at those gigs, they're going to get it, and it is definitely a positive thing. But those things are few and far between, and this comes back to what we were talking about before. Like, it used to be. And it sounds like I'm sort of harking back to the old days. But I wasn't even there, but in back in the sort of 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, you had all the big country acts would come over regularly touring, and they'd play the theaters or whatever. Like they'd be constantly over here. But I mean, that hasn't happened for so long. And you get the likes of Whitney Rose, and you get loads of other people of that type coming over, but it's not often enough really, and you haven't got the constant stream of country artists that you used to have, and it makes it very hard if you're trying to sort of get your foot in the door in a country like this, playing country music, because people just aren't going to see you in the right places or in the right whatever the word is context. Enough to really understand what you're doing. But I mean, it's just another complaint of mine. Yeah,
no, totally, man. I have the same thing, and it's like you only have maybe 6 to 8 artists coming over that are of that like caliber, of that draw, and it's very rare that a UK artist is in the conversation to even open for them. They'll normally bring someone over or have something set up, and I've been talking to Josh about it. It's like, how do we get more UK artists in that conversation when someone's coming over, to be like, not necessarily a Rolodex, but flick through and go, well, who the fuck is playing this type of music over here? And it's one of those things that's the downfall of the modern country scene from like 2010 onwards, is no one outside of the UK really knows what we're doing. Yeah,
that's a big problem. And that thing about them not, these acts coming over not using UK acts as support artists is a big thing, and it sounds like people like you and me are just griping about it because we're not getting the gigs, but actually it's a serious point, because if you see what the likes of Charlie Crockett and Colter Wall and people like that do in the US, they use an act from the region they're touring in to open for them for several shows, quite a few shows in a row, and they'll do all that, and that gives that artist big exposure. I've seen it with Summer Dean. Summer Dean has opened for so many bigger acts there, and she's now made a name for herself, and she's become a name in her own right, and it's all because of that exposure she's been given on those tours. And loads of other people. Colter Wall did it with loads of people, but when they come here, they bring someone with them more often than not always, but more often than not. I think Colter Wall did it with Ian No, and somebody else maybe, but it's like, if you're someone here that we're the region, they're coming from there, and they're to come to this region, but they won't have anybody from here. And it's probably not their fault. A lot of them it's like they have booking agents and stuff that decide this stuff for them, or they suggest people. I remember, and I'll name names here. I remember when Josh Headley came first time, because he's a good friend of mine, and I asked him about it, and he said, "Oh, well, we've got someone else that I've been recommended." It turned out to be Twinny, right? And it's like, I'm not saying anything about it, but it was like completely wrong for the show. Nothing against Twinny, because she's doing something completely different, right? It's like but that music, that crowd is not gonna get those two things. No,
totally.
And it was a recommendation from a booking agent, and it's like, I understand a booking agent's job is extremely hard, trying to get things all their ducks in a row and stuff. And also they've got pressure from other management and stuff where they're asked to include people. And you must imagine what the pressure must be from the labels in America. They're saying, oh, you should take so-and-so with you when you go to the UK because they need the exposure. It almost comes to the point where the artist has got almost no say in it.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's there's no real answer as to what you can really do about it. It's been a problem that I've faced for a long time, and I try and just kind of ignore it because there's not a lot I can do about it. I have, I ask my booking agent to have a word sometimes when I see someone coming over that would be worth opening for, but more often than not, you might as well be shouting at a brick wall. It's just like these people just aren't going to respond, and it's just the way the business is, mate. And it's like like a lot of things, you just have to kind of just get your head down and get on with it because you can't change it really.
Yeah, no, 100%. I agree with the same thing because like I send preemptive emails now where it's like this person's not toured the UK yet.
Yeah,
like
right.
Because it's also I put on shows as well, so it's like if they're coming over, let me know because I want to put a gig on, but also who the fuck's going to be opening for them, and it's that type of preemptive thing. But it is the UK scene isn't known internationally yet, which is where we pull our heads down and do the work, and hopefully we get a couple and just start building up from there. But it is one of those things where it's like, how do we get in that conversation? It is just putting the time in and hopefully building on what we already have.
Yeah. There's no sort of concrete answer, I'm afraid. No. But it's like with anything in music. I always say I think the answer is to just to play live as much as you can, and to make your live performances as good as they can possibly be, and to record stuff that's as good as it can possibly be, and if you keep doing that, those two things, then surely you'll start to make progress in some respect. That's always been the way I've looked at it.
Yeah, no, totally, man. Going on to what you were just talking about and having good music, Siempre, is that the correct pronunciation of it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Oh, I'm so proud of myself. But this is going to be your fourth album, is it?
That's fourth proper album, yeah.
Right, man. And what was it about the Kickstarter platform and that kind of thing that attracted you to it and made you want to do this album through it?
Well, I mean, it's
apart from the music industry being utter dog shit, and you need to.
It's kind of necessity, really.
Yeah.
But also, it's not just that. I mean, okay. It's very hard to find the money to make albums, at the moment. But that being said, it's I did potentially have other options on the table, but it was like the thing was, it's very important for me to have the complete control over it because my last album, that's what I had, and I think it's probably my best album, my last one, and I know exactly what I want to do with this one, and having that complete control was very important, and one of the only ways you can get that is if you can self-fund it in some way. Now, obviously, you could argue whether it's self-funding and asking people to support Kickstarter, but what those people are essentially doing is pre-ordering the album and some other rewards and stuff that are related to it. But so you're not just asking them to sort of just throw money in the pot and hope for the best, which is what I like about it, because I think there have been a few horror stories in the past where people have done things like that, like crowdfunding things, and no one's ever got anything out of it in the end. It never actually happened. So to me, it's like, people are pre-ordering the album. They know what they're going to get. They know roughly what I'm trying to do. And hopefully if all is well, I'll be able to keep on the timeline and deliver things when I'm hoping to.
Yeah. Cool, man. What is the timeline for things? So obviously you have the album written. Has anything been recorded yet, or are you going into the studio once this Kickstarter's kind of hit its goal? Yeah,
no, nothing's recorded yet. Everything's written, but it's once hopefully if the Kickstarter hits its goal, I'll be able to go in the studio end November, start of December. And I like to do things very quickly in the studio. I don't like to waste time because it's expensive time, that hopefully that will be done, and then within a couple of months we'll have it sort of mastered, and then you start like the PR process, which always takes about 4 months. So I don't really want to be hanging about. I think in the past I've hung about with stuff like that because you kind of sometimes when you've got a finished album like that, you're like, what do I really want to do with this? And is there anyone else who should hear this sort of thing? But this time I know what I want to do. I want to self-release it again like the last one, and it's so we can hopefully start the PR process early, and then it should be. I'm aiming for it to be out like June, July 2023. I think that's a realistic timescale.
Cool, yeah. No, that's awesome. And from kind of Kickstarter page, what you talked about, it's got like influenced by border rhythms and like a more Tex-Mex sound. What was it that kind of drew you to that like style?
I don't know. This is actually, it's kind of a bit like what I was saying earlier about how I got into country music and just kind of, didn't really know anything about it before, but stumbled across it and realized it suited me. And that's kind of what has happened with this Tex-Mex stuff, which is, in my opinion, it's a subgenre of country. I mean, it's definitely folk music. And I mean, I loved, one of my favorite bands, possibly my favorite band, is the Texas Tornadoes with Doug Sam. And they obviously took a lot of that music and fused it with kind of country and their own stuff, and also some of the Sir Douglas Quintet stuff, which is like 60s pop music, so I can, I love that sort of thing. I mean, something I should stress, I think I said before, that it's not a full Tex-Mex album, because if it was, like, it would be 90% like fast polkas, and I don't think people are really ready for that, to be honest. But there will be elements of that. And I love the sort of, but I've already written a few songs that have been on my previous albums that have had kind of border rhythms, like bolero type rhythms, which just seems to come very naturally to me. So I kind of wanted to explore that a bit further, and I learned as much as I could about it. And it's very hard to learn about Tex-Mex music because it's such a niche thing. It's South Texas, northern Mexico border. And really, I mean, the only town you're going to find a lot of it in is San Antonio. But there's also a lot of those border towns which apparently are not safe to go to anymore, where there's loads of it. But that's where people used to go to go and listen to it when it was safe. But these days it's a folk thing that it still goes on, but you have to look for it. And I've been learning the bajo quinto, which is a specifically Tex-Mex instrument. It's the 10-string version of the bajo sexto, which is arguably more common, but that's part of it as well.
Cool. And where did you track down that instrument? Did you get it shipped in from the States?
Yeah, I had to. You can't get them anywhere. I was hoping there might be somewhere like on Denmark Street in London or something that didn't, but no. I'll be perfectly honest, they're very hard to play because it's a guitar essentially, but it's like it's tuned differently, and the chords you're playing are very tough on your wrist, and especially if you're playing quite sort of fast paced, which a lot of the songs are. So that's just a matter of practice. But I've been talking to one of the people that I'm hoping is going to be involved with this album is Wes McGee, who is one of the great country artists ever to come out of the UK, and he was a master of that Tex-Mex stuff. He learned it all when he was in Austin, and I asked him. He was the one who told me. He said, "You need to get a bajo sexto or a quinto if you're going to do it properly." And I told him how much trouble I'm having with my wrist, and he said, "Well, you see, you're doing it wrong. You need to drink loads of tequila before you even pick one up." He said these things could only have been invented by a Mexican. You have to ingest like about a liter of tequila before you even think about playing it. So maybe that's where I'm going wrong.
Yeah, you need to just get a few shots or half a bottle in you before you.
Yeah,
do it.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And what was it about like the songwriting process that kind of spoke to you about this? Because obviously you'll be writing these songs solo with you just voice and a guitar. What was it that kind of drew you to that style and made you want to follow this path?
I think it's partly because it's different from what I've done before. And I'm very conscious, if you listen to my first 3 albums, that I write a lot of shuffles. And it's hard sometimes when I'm playing live, like, or I'm writing a set list or something, I'm like, I've got like 3 shuffles in a row there. Like, it's like, but it's finding one that on the track list for my previous albums that isn't a shuffle. So I wanted to do, that is part of it. Seriously, I wanted to have an album that wasn't filled with shuffles, but also I just wanted to explore something new, because with country songwriting, if you're playing traditional country, you can get if you're doing it in a specifically dancehall way, then you get kind of locked into the shuffles and the waltzes and the odd bolero I was doing, like just because that's what people expect to hear, and I know that a lot of my fans sort of like all that sort of stuff, so I didn't want to disappoint them. But at the same time, I think it would be a little bit, it would lack a bit of courage if I didn't try something different on like my fourth album.
Totally.
I think everyone would be happy if I did another Honky Tonk album, and I'm certainly not going to leave that stuff behind, and I certainly will go back to it. But it's like, I want to try something different. And truth be told, it's really not that far removed. It's stuff that you would recognise from the similar era that my other stuff is as well. So I don't think people are going to be horrified.
No, right on, man. And with it kind of having that kind of vibe and sensibility, have you approached like the lyrics and the songwriting and the storytelling any differently?
Maybe a little bit. I mean, there's some subject matter that's sort of, I guess, you don't want to get too far, because if you're writing that sort of style of music that evokes those sort of, I don't know, like border vibes or whatever, you can't be writing about, I don't know, like going down to Lidl or something, and I don't know, like it's like, you can't be writing about things that are completely alien from that thing. So whilst something I've always tried to avoid in my songwriting is pretending that I'm someone I'm not, like pretending that I live in America and trying to, and that I'm constantly riding a horse around the pasture, or that I'm driving down desert roads and stuff, because that's not, because it's I think people value the authenticity in my music.
Totally.
So I try and get real, but at the same time, with this kind of vibe, you have to kind of evoke a certain feeling. So I hope I've struck the balance with that. It's a very roundabout answer to that question, but I hope I've struck a bit more of a balance. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, right. And with your lyrics, from your previous albums and going into this one, you talk about like wanting it to be authentic and, not necessarily pretending that you're something you're not. But has there been times across your songwriting where, obviously like John Prine was quite famous for writing songs from another point of view? Was it one of those things as a UK artist you were not necessarily worried, or you were conscious of, if I write from the perspective of, say, an American character, this will then get interpreted that I'm a British artist trying to pretend to be American instead of, writing from an imaginative stance?
Yeah, I think, I think that's definitely something I was worried about. But I get accused anyway all the time of pretending to be American. I've always had that, and it's like, and I think most UK country artists will get it at some point, because what else can you do? But I definitely, I think the thing is, I don't really write story songs from other people's perspectives. I have written songs actually that are a bit like that are kind of loosely based on personal experience, but are more of a story song. But they're very few and far between. And I think you can go too far with it, and start talking about things you just don't know about.
No,
it's I don't know. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's wrong at all. I think it would be wrong for me, and I don't want to say it's wrong, because there are many great songwriters who have achieved it, and even like writers, like authors have written about, who say English authors have written about being American or whatever, or in America, and they've done it very authentically. So I please don't think that I'm saying it's wrong. I really don't think that,
it has to come from like an authentic perspective, even if you are writing about something that's necessarily inauthentic to yourself. It's like I always joke when I'm playing live, I have a song about the M53. I kind of preempted by saying, I'm a British country singer, so I don't sing about highways, I sing about motorways. I'm trying to turn it into a bit of a joke, but it is one of those things where it's, you don't want to get necessarily, because you are right, people are going to accuse you of trying to sound American no matter what you do. But I do try and make a point of being like this is the flag, like on the hill that I'm like standing behind, it being like, this is, a British sound stuff, and I'll
Yeah.
you use "went" in a song and just try and throw in some actual like words and phrases that I use instead of like highways and back roads and shit like that.
Yeah, yeah. It's a totally valid point, and the joke was made at some point with me that if I were to sing completely about who I am, where I live, and in completely my own accent, then it would be like the Wurzels, and I completely understand that. But at the same time, that's actually another point, and I don't know, I'm sure a lot of UK country artists get this, but I get asked about the voice that I sing in all the time, and honestly, it's just the voice that comes out when I sing it. It's just that because it's country. I think it's going to have a bit of a kind of twang in it, I guess, but that's just the voice that comes out when I sing. But a lot of people really they really want to quiz me on it. They're like, why don't you just sing in your own voice? And it's like, well, like sometimes that, but like I say, it's the one that comes out. But if I made a real concerted effort to sing in the accent that I speak in, I think that would sound worse in a way. I think it would sound like I was trying to put something on,
Yeah.
Like, trying to think that there are some artists that works really well for, whose actual voices work really well for them.
I think that's like the kind of speak singy people, like even like Leonard Cohen or the Jason Isbells, Billy Bragg, those type of people, where it's like
an obvious one.
Yeah, they have those accents, and it's but for the most part, because it's even like Canadians sing in that it's a Western kind of accent, not country and Western, but Western Hemisphere, England, Britain, Canada, even Australia has like that kind of thing too. Because I know I don't put on a voice, I sing as true as I can without trying to put. Because when I first started, when I was a kid, I sang with this horrendously bad Eddie Vedder impression, just because that was kind of like what I grew up on, and then what I kind of hid behind because I wasn't confident in my own voice.
Yeah.
But then I'll speak in between, and then I get a ton of people coming up to me after the show being like, "Where the fuck are you from?" Because my accent in between it kind of goes all over the place because I do have a weird accent. But it is one of those things where it's like that's for like even in pop, rap, any metal, any genre really, there's no real someone trying to be, put their accent into it. They always sing with some sort of Western-esque something to it.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of, I mean, it gets called transatlantic, I think, a little bit, doesn't it? Like, I mean, you can't tell me that Mick Jagger or whatever like that, people, all those legendary people, and the Beatles grew up just emulating all their American rock and roll heroes. Like it's
the Beatles didn't sound Scouse when they sang.
No, exactly. It's kind of an annoying thing but like people always think that people say, oh, it's hilarious to hear you speak between the songs because you sound so different. And honestly, to me, it doesn't sound different. To me, it's just like I just sang the song and now I'm speaking and that's it.
It's just a part and parcel of it.
Yeah. But there you go. But people, it is all down to interpretation.
Yeah. No, totally, man. And with the new album, with Kickstarter, one of the rewards I saw going up was your first guitar.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Was that a hard decision to put up to?
Yeah, it kind of is. I mean, on the one hand, obviously I don't play anymore, so that's one thing. But also, it has got a lot of sort of sentimental value. The way I learned to play the guitar probably set me back years because I learned from a Leonard Cohen chord book, and his chord progressions are a bit odd. So I didn't really understand about basic chord progressions for a long time. I thought his were like normal, it's very important to me because I was completely self-taught on the guitar. I never learned from anyone else, which is another thing that set me back years probably. Everything that I ever discovered trying to play Leonard Cohen and Loudon Wainwright, and then the beginnings of like Hank Williams stuff, it was probably the first country artist I really properly listened to. It was all done on that guitar, and it was to me it was very important because it was my thing that I was going to do. And it took me a long, long time of practicing and learning to sort of get confident enough with it. But it was that guitar that I learned it all on.
Yeah, no man, you don't forget your first. Like I've still got mine, and it's not as nice as a Yamaha one. This was a beat up like Argos classical one for like 20 quid.
Yeah,
and I've still got it, and it's still got the exact same nylon strings, and it can't hold tune for longer than like a minute. But I still have it downstairs, and whenever I'm making a cup of tea or I've got like a spare, like my hands are just free, it's just
Yeah.
back in them, and I'm just like twiddling along on it. But yeah, man, I saw that go up, and I was like, this album means a lot.
Well, yeah, I mean, but at the same time, you can't hold on to these things forever. And like
No.
I say, to be honest, I don't use it anymore. So I'd much rather someone had it and A, either used it to learn themselves, or B, just put it up somewhere and said, oh, I've got Ags Connolly's first guitar. And
Yeah.
you know, because I think there's maybe one or two people in existence who might think that was a good thing to have. But, you know, like if they want it, they're completely welcome to it. But I mean, it might be that nobody wants it. I'm completely prepared for that eventuality as well.
Yeah. No, man, it's one of those things, and it's, you know, when you have like any level of fan base, it can just be like the oddest, or, you know, the thing that you don't think anyone will give a shit about is the thing that people gravitate towards. And that I saw that, and that was a really cool thing, and I really respected it, because I always, you know, like I sold 2 guitars off to pay for like my first album, and I sold a ton of my comic book collection off to like, so when I see someone putting up like something that they really, you know, care about and love, I'm like, they really fucking mean this.
Yeah. I don't know. It's you know, I think if you look at the Kickstarter rewards, like, you know, I mean, I didn't want to sort of over promise things to people. You know, I didn't want to promise things I couldn't deliver.
Yeah.
But you know, there's a certain amount of sacrifice. You know, there's things like house concerts there, which you know, like. You know, it's obviously I've got to travel to go and service house and play music, and that's, you know, that's fine. If it helps you make this album, I've got no problem with it. And you know, I'll drive up and down the country for it. Same with you know, songwriting tips thing. I said I'll do like a Zoom thing, like, you know, just you know, and help someone work on a song, and you know, I'll happily do the preparation work for it, and do whatever else, because you know, I've got no problem with doing that, and I probably, you know, should really have thought about doing like something like that in lockdown, maybe, but never actually got around to it. But yeah, I you know, I need to give up part of myself if I expect other people to give to me, you know.
Yeah, no, totally, man. With the songwriting stuff, I'm not going to try and get a free lesson out of you. But with, you know, when someone comes to you with a song or wants some songwriting advice, is there anything that is like the top 2 things that come to your mind at the forefront of what you kind of look for, or what you think they should be looking for?
Well, it depends really, because everyone's sort of got different things they want from it. But I mean, one of the main ones I notice with a lot of like people starting out with songwriting is that they try and write songs that are too long. Yeah, and it's the great. I've got a book around here by Tom T. Hall somewhere that he wrote about songwriting, and one of the main things he says in it is, he says, get in, make your point, and get out. Don't just be hanging around just for the sake of it. Because I think when I started writing songs, I used to think, oh, you know, every song, you know, a good song is like 4.5 minutes long, so that's how long my song should be, just for the sake of it. And it's when you think about it, it's mad, you know, like. So there's that. I mean, that's one of the main ones. It really depends. Some people have real hang-ups on certain things on songwriting, which I had, because it took me a long time to get confident with songwriting. Probably because I was just doing it on my own and had no other input and no one to bounce off or whatever. So that's probably what took so long. But so you can find yourself getting caught in little sort of ruts and not knowing the way out because you've got nothing else there to tell you. But anyway, I hope I could be of some help to somebody, but we'll see.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. That's definitely one of the things as a songwriter I learned was, you know, it's saving the song. It is, you don't need a 4.5 minute track unless the story is not done in that time, and then you go to that point. But because even I've done a song and it's like maybe clocking in like 2 minutes or something. I'm like, I don't need to say anything else with this thing. I'm just gonna fucking do it as a quick one.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I mean, I never quite been confident enough to write like a 1 minute song or something. But people, you know, there's so many great songs from the old days that are less than 2 minutes. You know, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I saw Amigo the Devil a few months back, and he peppered in across the set. He had like 5 1-minute songs.
Right. Yeah.
That were like really interesting, because like a couple of them were kind of like farcical, where it was kind of like playing on astronauts and stuff like that. But one was done from the perspective of his dog waiting for him to come home, and it fucking ripped the heart out of the entire audience. Yeah, but it was literally like a minute long.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
But that's one of those fun things where maybe it is, a live set and where you throw in like a 30-second quick, almost like a skit, but it's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it can happen. And I've seen also when you see some artists who normally play with a band play solo, they'll just cut out the anything that would have been an instrumental or something, and just massively shorten a song. And there's nothing wrong with doing that, I think people get hung up on stuff like that.
No, totally, man. Obviously the Kickstarter, hopefully everything will start coming out towards the middle of next year.
Yeah.
What live shows do you have coming up for the rest of the year?
I've got a few things coming up. It's a good question. I don't know how soon this is going out, but
this will be coming out in 2 weeks.
Okay, right. So in 2 weeks, I will have done what I'm doing this weekend. So that's fine. The next big thing I've got really is the start of October. I'm going to Sweden for a week.
Oh, cool.
It's the first time I've ever been there, and that's somewhere. Scandinavia is a great place that for supporters of country music, and I've been trying to get there for so long, and I'm very glad that that's come together. I'm also going to be going to do a festival in the Netherlands again at the end of October. But in the middle of that, I think I'm doing a show in London at the Moth Club in Hackney for it's Morton Valance's album launch, and
cool.
I'm opening for them. That was something that the Cow Pie label brought together. And after that, I'll be doing some shows up in Scotland towards end of October, start of November, because I've been desperate to get back up there for a long time. I've got lots of fans up there, and I absolutely love getting back to Scotland whenever I can. So I'll be announcing those pretty soon, I think.
Oh, sick, man. Well, I think that's a good place to call it. I've got a pork shoulder that I'm currently slow cooking out in a barbecue, and I'm getting some panic texts from my wife saying it's smoking a bit too much. I'm going to...
I thought that was going to be a euphemism for something. Then
No, it's 100%. I've set in a little thermometer to check the temperature, and I've been saying it's beeping, Mike. So I've got to go check on that. But thank you so much for doing this, man. I really can't fucking wait for this record because I'm a huge fan of what you do, and I'm hoping to see a Liverpool date on those announced.
Yeah. Hopefully. I should just mention this for you. I find it really hard to play up north these days because a lot of the places I used to play just aren't there anymore. Yeah. And people often ask me, why don't you come up north? And honestly, I don't know. I'd love to get back up there. So at some point, I'm sure I will be back.
And just to let you know, the pork shoulder was delicious. That was Ags Connolly for episode 52 of the Rogue Country podcast. You can go kickstart his new album, Siempre, right now. Head over to his social media channels, follow the link. There's many different tiers of what you can support. You can get a CD, a vinyl, songwriting lessons. There's so much there, and Ags is one of those stand-up guys that you really should go support. So until next time, folks, keep supporting the things you love, keep doing the things you love. Peace.